is episode number 11, and I am jacked up. Jacked up, I say, because I am about to have a conversation with a mentor of mine, Dave Appleton, Upriver Video Productions. He's the guy that I learned from to become the videographer that I am today. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, Major League Fishing. Here we go.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
Well, Dave, first and foremost, I want to thank you for coming on another fishing podcast. I know you've been wanting to do this. This is a really big deal for you. I know this is going to increase your Instagram following, just the huge following that we have. It's just anybody that comes on another fishing podcast, they just have a windfall of social media followers and whatnot, that come to them. So I'm really glad that you decided to take some time and join us here.
Well, I'll be glad too, because I'll get some, publicity for you with my 3,100 followers.
Nice. Yeah, no.
I haven't looked in about 6 weeks though, so I don't even know.
So so we have a long history. Yes. It goes back. I have to remember that I'm actually switching camera angles here too. So this is a common problem for the video podcast portion of what we do. But I got it. Our origin story, I think, is pretty important. How far back we go, because we've known each other. I started exactly at Bass Pro Shops video production department. I started exactly January of 2000. Exactly.
Is that right?
So,
wow.
Yeah. So it's really easy for me to remember, how far back we go. So it's like 21. I'm terrible at math, but I'm pretty sure that's about 20. It's over 21 years now.
Amazing. You are good at math.
Yeah. And then before that, I interned for Bass Pro Shops. But before
that was before, okay.
Yeah, but that was the summer of 1999. And so I remember vividly in college going, oh my God, what am I going to do? I wanted to, I was thinking about, I don't know if you know this or not, but I really wanted to be a professional bass fisherman, even in college,
I remember that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I wanted a fallback plan. And so the fallback plan was to, I was always into fishing television and just movies and things like that. So video production television was like my fallback plan, right?
Right.
But I wanted to combine the two, my love of fishing with TV, whatever. So you were on my hit list of internships I wanted to have was Bass Pro Shops. I don't know that you know that exactly, Dave. I was like, okay, I need to get an internship. I hear from all my college professors that it's so important, to have an internship. Uh-huh. And so you were the man that I hounded and I hounded and I hounded. I emailed and I emailed. I was like, I can't remember how I got your name. But I was like, okay, Dave Appleton. I just keep emailing. What was your title at the time at Bass Pro Shops?
Oh, it's probably something really lower middle management, like senior editor or something like that, editing supervisor, production senior partner assistant or something. But I do remember that was like early in emails. I remember Bass Pro gave me a computer about that time, about 1999 or 2000 for the first time. And I guess a lot of people had been emailing me and I didn't even know it. So the first time I opened it, I got about 300 emails. So I just replied to everybody somehow or another. Anyway, what I remember about you is you were persistent, and it got the attention of Steve Hargis, who was the boss of the whole department. And he liked persistence. He liked people that were go-getters. And sure enough, he brought you on as an intern. And I think you, if I remember right, you even stayed at his house for a little while, the boss man's house, and helped him tie flies and things like that. And
I love it. I love it. Ragging on me already. That's what I was hoping we'd get into here. Yes.
Well, no, that just shows you're a go-getter who also knows how to get free housing for.
Yeah, so I mean, I basically, this is about you. I'm trying to set up our origin story here. I don't want to keep talking about this. Is all about you, Dave. But
it's interesting.
The origin story has to of us has to, this is where it starts.
Yep.
And so, I mean, in college, I was just like I was emailing you, and it was just kind of funny because you were, and I don't blame it. You're like, I have no idea who this guy in Pennsylvania is, and he keeps emailing me. And I heard that you want to be persistent. Don't be annoying,
right.
But you want to be persistent, and then follow up. Send the cover letter, and then follow up in like a week. With an email or a letter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kept doing that. And so yes. Yes, it's very true. There was some brown nosing going on. You got to do what you got to do. The boss man, he took me under his wing. You were, I mean, I basically had like two bosses. Yes. Like you were, honestly, you were like the one I dealt with the most.
Yeah.
I mean, it was we worked quite closely together. But when I finally got the job, but so it's just kind of funny how everything worked out. You passed along my information to Steve, and then Steve and you guys got together. Okay, let's do this. Let's just let's see what happens. Gave me a summer internship. It turned into it wasn't supposed to be pain. I drove down to Pennsylvania, or drove from Pennsylvania to Missouri. It turned into a paying internship, and then I was offered a job the next after. So I graduated in the fall of 1999, and I was offered a job at Bass Pro Shops, and the rest is history. And the reality is that I learned. I didn't learn anything. I was thinking about this recently, Dave. I didn't learn crap in college. I mean, I really didn't. And. I learned under your tutelage, Randy White's tutelage. Randy White is now, he's the producer of Major League Fishing. Steve and just everybody in that department, that was my education. And I mean, and I'm very, very thankful for that.
Same here. Well, you were actually a good contribution to the team, because while we had a lot of fishermen, we didn't have what I would call avid tournament type fishermen that you were. And I remember you towing a boat down in your two-wheel drive Chevy Scottsdale or something like that, and we were all impressed with that you already knew more about bass fishing as far as on the water compared to what we knew just standing behind Kevin and people like that, which we pick up a lot, obviously. I always say I'm more like an analyst than an expert at bass fishing, because I've seen a lot, but I haven't been able to do a lot because I'm always standing there with a camera like you. But what you brought to the table was more expertise in the details of bass fishing from a production point of view that really helped us. I think it took us to the next level in our bass fishing show, because remember, that wasn't a couple of years after that we started the Bass Pro Show, which is very much a drilled down show with instruction, and you were able to help with that through the first Out in the World Fishing. And then I think I remember you being on camera the first time with Sharp Points, if I remember right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you did a good job at that. So that kind of launched your foray into being on camera, which you've done a good job at too.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a lot of fun, and we learned a lot together. I mean, that was technology changed as you got there. I mean, and it keeps changing. And gosh, I mean, all these years later, we're still doing bass fishing TV. So in fact, that's all I do anymore. I haven't done a hunting show or any other species in years.
Is that right?
It's all bass. So, yeah, it's just the way it evolved.
So that's what I kind of wanted to get into, because I've had some people that have watched what we're doing here, our videos, some of our videos, some of younger anglers, and they've asked like how did I get into this line of work? Tell me what your how you got into what you're doing now. Kind of just go through how you started. How you got to basically, you went to college, go through that, and then how you got with Bass Pro Shops, and then where you're at now.
Okay. So I started out like you. I started out in college, and at the time it was called electronic media, I think, which was basically tape-based production. And I kind of fell in love with it. I had started out in wildlife management. And, didn't do really good in biology. So then I thought, well, I think I'll get into radio because I've been told I got a great voice. So
yes, you do.
That didn't work out either. So anyway, I took an intro to production. And I really loved it. I just remember cracking open that camera case the first time, and it smelled good, and it felt like I was a high-tech redneck, you know. So I went around, shot stuff, and then, like you, I got an internship at a local TV station and busted my butt on that as best I could, and then ended up getting a full-time job there at a local ABC affiliate. Stayed there for several years, went to Kansas City for a year and a half, and Trans World Airlines, which is now defunct. I put them out of business.
Nice.
And then Steve Hargis, the same guy you were staying with,
bunked up.
He called me and said, "Hey, I got a job here at Bass Pro. You interested?" And I shot boats with them for a year, and did all that. And then they started doing retail fishing videos. The 1993, I think, was the first retail fishing video back on VHS when they'd sell, 500,000 of them out of the store and catalog.
Yeah.
Very first one I did was with Kevin Van Dam, and it was called Spinnerbait Tactics with Kevin Van Dam.
I've seen
Steve
it.
Called me and was
Pretty sure I bought that video.
Oh, good. Thank you. He said, "We got this young guy. I think he's going to be all right. New Nitro Pro. He won like Angler of the Year, Rookie of the Year, something like that." So I'll never forget. Went up to Kevin's for like, I don't know, a week and a half or something. And we shot his spinnerbait stuff. And of course, he blew fish out of the water everywhere he went because we were in Lake Michigan, or not Lake Huron, and Lake Michigan and all the places that he knew so well. So I thought, well, this is easy.
Yeah. It's so easy.
So
you've learned later how easy it is to get fishing content.
Exactly. Yeah. Like Takahiro said in an interview the other day, he said, "It's a lot harder than it looks. It looks easy because we put all the fish together." But he said, when you do it all day, it's harder than it looks, which is what we do every day of our life pretty much. But anyway, so that went into the first TV shows, and then you joined, and I've been doing outdoor TV since, pretty much.
So what was it like? And what's funny is I remember that cover of that retail video you did. Mm-hmm. So it was Van Dam, and he's holding a bass, and he's got his that vest on, and like this vest, like everybody like
sponsor vest.
It was right on the tail end of that, like going out of style,
Uh-huh.
But he had a big bass, like for whatever, and I'm pretty sure that's how what that cover looked like or whatever on that retail video.
Yeah, probably was.
But
yeah.
What was it? I mean, when people think of that it's glamorous, making a TV show, and I mean, so we started out doing Outdoor World. When I came on board in January of 2000, we were thick into doing Outdoor World, the TV show, which was on the Nashville network. Yeah. Which is then turned into the Spike network, if I'm not mistaken, which I don't even know is Spike still around? I don't have cable, so.
I don't think so. It turned into then Versus.
Oh, that's right.
And eventually NBC Sports, I think.
That's right. That's exactly what it did.
They bought them.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. So, but so I mean, in those times, so we do a shoot. For how many segments did we have in that show? So it was a 30-minute show, and we had, 2 or 3 segments of it?
We had 2 segments plus a little tip thing, if I remember right. And that was a pretty big undertaking. And the thing is, we were doing a hunting show at the same time, which also had 2 segments. So I remember on the calendar, we'd have about 100 shoots per year to produce for those 2 shows. Because you had to factor failure in. I remember hunting was a pretty big failure rate, especially early on, because we were carrying a lot more equipment and we didn't know what we were doing as much. I mean, there was some history in it. We learned a lot, but we'd go to somebody and say, "Hey, I got a lot of deer over here. You need to come over here. I'll give you, accommodations," and then there'd be no deer. So we learned in a couple of years where to go and where not to go. And of course, back when it was on TNN, you'd get 1 million views a week. So if somebody called you, they were going to give you the world because they needed the publicity for their outfitting business. But anyway, same with fishing.
That's right.
I remember you going to like Wollaston Lake Lodge, which is probably was a $10,000 trip.
Yeah.
And I went to Plummer's Lake. We went to the Amazon. Of course, that was financed by somebody else we know. But So they were just basically giving us stuff, saying, please come, and we'd go, yeah. So we were living this glamorous lifestyle, but we were, only the camera guys. So we'd go. That's what I remember most about those times is, and we still get to some, but we'd go to these amazingly expensive, world-class places, never pick up a rod, but still got to experience it with a camera, which was next best thing.
That's right.
You agree?
Oh no, I agree, and I think back on some of the trips that I made, for Bass Pro Shops, and then for Wintercom, which Wintercom is basically Major League Fishing now. Wintercom's a video production company based in Tulsa that I used to work for, and that we both, I guess, Wintercom is still around, is my understanding, but there's also but. When at Bass Pro Shops, I'm remembering more now how, you orchestrated, pretty much you were the one orchestrating, you and Randy White, I would say, were orchestrating, doing the logistics of the shoots. And I'm remembering how just, as a young guy in my early 20s, just going, wow, I was blown away by just the kind of pressure I felt that you were under to produce and come up with a schedule. And here I was just taking orders from you, like, okay, well, send me. I'm going off to, I'm going off to Michigan to film with Van Dam or wherever, Cavaias for walleyes on the Detroit River. And you were also doing that, but you were orchestrating, okay, we're going to go here on this month. We have to deal with this guy. We got to get permits for this and that. And it's, that's a heck of a headache in many respects.
It was, but we put the calendar together and did our best to meet the production. It wasn't that wasn't the hard part. I enjoyed that part. It was kind of fun because it was like I was living the dream on somebody else's money. I could put together these great trips, and we had a lot of help from the hosts. Remember, they usually came up with the storylines, and we'd reject or accept them. And so we'd put that calendar. I remember I had one of those giant Post-it note things that used to come out on the wall, and I would scratch out stuff, or I'd put a check mark if it was successful. But a lot of the pressure was when you were actually on location, because the one thing that people in the production business, most of them don't understand, is the difference between hunting and fishing in most production is you fail a lot.
That's right.
And it's not because of equipment, it's because you don't get what you need. Fishing's a little better. I'd say that's 90% success ratio, especially working with the guys we work with. But hunting, at one point, I remember, was about 40% with whitetail was our success ratio. So you waste a lot of money.
That's amazing.
You got a lot of footage that never sees the light of day. And that was what you had to factor in. You'd schedule 40% more than you think you might need for a hunting show. So consequently, we'd go off on 100 trips a year to get 2 shows put together. And at one time, we were doing 4 shows, because remember, we had the kids show,
right,
which also had 2 segments.
Yeah, Next Gen.
Yeah, and we had the kids show, we had 2 Outdoor World shows, we had the Bass Pros at the same time. And what really made it easy was, frankly, and not meaning to blow smoke, but you and Randy and Mike Tetnorris and Ken Langeth and Steve Hargis and all the other freelancers that helped us, we just weeded out people until we got down to the people that we know would bring back good stuff or die trying. And when they didn't, we just didn't use them again. But we developed a system and a formula of production, and we were always trying to do the next level of production as a team. We all took pride in our work. We didn't come home until we thought we were getting really good stuff, and I think that made a difference. And that's what made the show successful and well rated on the Outdoor Channel or wherever they were. Is we just had a good team. So it was a pleasure, really. It wasn't difficult. The most difficult thing was being away from family.
Yes.
And friends, and that put a lot of pressure on my wife and kids and our home life. But overall, it's I would say even that part of the pressure of the structuring the shows was kind of fun, because it was, like I said, it was living the dream life on somebody else's dime.
Yeah, for sure. And I try to think about why I'm drawn to this job, and I think I've as a fisherman, I've always loved the outdoors. Of course, I love thinking about what's under the water. I love capturing that, trying to capture that, doing underwater stuff, trying to tell the story, the fishing story. And I love that aspect of what we do.
Right.
But the more I think about it, I also just think I love adventure. I can't imagine and I've done it. I've, sitting in an office and sitting in a cubicle. I've done that. I know I don't like it. But the adventure that we experience, just that we're going places, even the airport, a lot in life can be an adventure, but I mean, going to the airport, just seeing all the people a lot of times I don't know where I'm going until I'm like, oh, I have a shoot coming up. I got to look at where I'm going so I can pack. And then I'm like, oh, cool. This is a new town. Or what will we find there? There's all that. But then, when you get on the water, if you're doing a fishing shoot, especially like Major League Fishing, you see and it's kind of scary sometimes because with what we do, we're so exposed to the elements. Mm-hmm. But I've thought about it more and more. I like it. And it can be taxing and it can beat the crap out of me. And I'll need to recover for days just because my back's aching. And it's just like it was cold for 4 days of filming and then it rained the next 2 days or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But more and more, I think it's just it's exciting. It's exhilarating. It's one of the reasons why I like this job. It's never the same. It's always different,
Right.
Do you feel that way?
Oh, 100%. I even told my wife, when we finally retire, if that ever happens in this business, first thing I want to do is hit the road because I really like travel. I really like the next thing. I'm always like, what's next? I mean, I'm packing today because we go to Texas on Sunday or Monday.
Yeah.
And even Jasper, Texas, like, cool. I've never been there.
Right. Yeah, me neither. I don't think I have.
What's this holiday in like?
Yeah.
But yeah, and the memories you build up from it too is real helpful. And you and I were talking about this the other day. I said the best part of a trip is thinking about it and remembering it. Usually the trip itself can be a pain in the butt, but the stuff you do on the water, of course, is a little different from me. I produce that Bass Pro Show, so I have a lot of creative control. You and I have worked on that together. I can start and stop things. I can ask to redo things, but me and Rob Newell come down on the water at the MLF event and see you guys. I always know who it is when I pull up because everybody's got their own posture or their way of standing. And I always say that's underdog because you do this stretch thing.
It's like yoga. It's cameraman yoga.
And I've done it enough, what you're doing every day on MLF to know how hard that is. It's in it when you add weather into it, that's exhausting. And I always say, even though I don't do it nearly as much as you guys, I've done it a lot in the past, and I've got the shoulder pad to prove it,
no doubt.
Scar tissue. But I say, I don't care what you do to stay in shape, to think about staying in shape. It makes no difference. It's pure torture is what it is. It becomes torture more than physically difficult. And the fact that, and I've been at it literally as early as this morning or as recently as this morning, I was editing footage that you guys do. And I'm always amazed at how the quality never deteriorates from start to finish. There's never any like, oh, well, I missed that fish because I was having a smoke break or something. Literally, I think they need to understand, folks, that camera's on your shoulder the entire day or maybe 15 minutes when you're taking a snack and you still got to be ready because they may say some genius thing during a break. So my hat's off to the guys that are on the water with the tournaments, whatever tournament it is every day, because that is a really, really physically taxing job. And when the weather's bad and the waves are bad and the fishing's bad, it's even worse. So hats off to you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. But, I really kind of, I am able to, I feel like I have an advantage in that I really am. I used to be absolutely eaten up with bass fishing on television. Like the Bassmasters with Bob Cobb, that show got me hooked on tournament bass fishing, just watching that show. And that made me want to actually become a tournament bass fisherman when I was a kid. And I really, and to this day, I love tournament bass fishing. I love the sport of bass fishing. If I have a sport, I'm wearing a Twins hat, but this is more like state pride more than anything. I mean, my sport is bass fishing, and some people might laugh and say, that's not a sport. Well, I'm like, if golf is a sport, we could say bass fishing's a sport, for crying out loud.
Yeah. The argument is whether it's athletic or not. To me, it's a sport. Of course, it's a sport.
Yeah, it's not athletic. I am one of those, Dave, I will never call a fisherman an athlete. I don't fall into that camp. I mean, although I would say that the MLF format, because it's so quick and fast paced, it's a little bit easier for me to maybe think about calling it, these guys athletes, but it doesn't rise to being an athletic sport. So, but
athleticism is an advantage. How about that? Athleticism is an advantage in that some of the techniques that they need to do requires great coordination and things like that. But as far as like needing cardiovascular fitness and the ability to jump 3.5 feet or run the 40 in 30 seconds or whatever, that's a pretty slow one actually. I mean, but it's not required for the sport. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to chuckle. I was filming a weigh-in recently, and some of these guys get up on stage and they talk about being athletes, and I come on, you know what I'm saying? I mean, come on. I think you have to be athletic to be an athlete, and trust me, you don't. So I think it's, for the most part, it's a ridiculous argument. But that's for another time, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We better not get too deep into it.
But so I wanted to talk. So you are now you left Bass Pro Shops. When did you leave Bass Pro Shops and start your own business?
It's really funny you say that, because I was just like going through some stuff, trying to clean up my office a little bit, and my wife had found an old letter from the guy we used to work for that thanked me for working there, and that was October 25th, 2009.
Oh,
it's funny because I just saw that like 15 minutes ago. So it would have been then, and that was because of Randy White, the guy that worked with us. I had been thinking about going off as a contractor and start my own little deal. And Randy called and said, hey, I've got this Ducks Unlimited show that needs a field producer for the next 6 months. And that was kind of coffee. That was kind of my jumping off point.
I usually have a beer right here, Dave, so don't, Yeah.
I always got a coffee right here until 5 o'clock. So that was my leaping off, my ability to do that without like risking, because my kids were still young. They were, I don't know, would have been 10 years old or something. So it wasn't a small risk. And that was when the economy was pretty bad too. So I took a chance, and I've been going ever since. Have I got rich? No. But I did promise my wife that I would pay myself a salary instead of just, here's some money that came in and do what you want with it,
Right.
So I've been able to meet that check, not with great raises, but meet that check every month and still save, a little bit for retirement. So as I get older, that becomes more and more important. So it's been great, and I've been continuing the adventures. And I like the idea, as you and I have talked about, of being able to just say no. If I don't want to do something, all I got to do is say I'm booked that week, and nobody asks any questions.
Yeah, and that's a hell of a freedom. To me, that's a hell of a freedom. I realized pretty quickly on, working in an office and just working for someone, I guess, as an employee, that I really didn't want to do it. I didn't really, I was like, okay, I need to start making steps now. It's kind of like just investing, but you're investing in yourself. And so I was like, I need to start making steps right now so that eventually down the road, and maybe a long way down the road, but eventually down the road, I can work for myself. And you have to sacrifice. You have to know that there's going to be sacrifice, but you have to, and you're investing, and you're with the hopes that it's going to pay off down the road. And it's pretty awesome that it's worked out for both of us that way, I
think MLF was a big part of that.
No doubt.
Because that started about the same time. You were on the first one too. I remember you famously got your arm hooked by Kevin Van Dam.
Yeah.
And that was Amistad, and I think it was like 2010 or 11. And I remember Randy calling us and saying, hey, we got this little deal they're trying out. They're going to see if it works out. Major League Fishing, they got some different things they're going to do. It's kind of cool. We're going to do one this year, see how it goes.
Yeah, it was in 2011.
Yeah, and here we are. How many events we got? 14 this year.
It's amazing.
When you include the Big Five and other things. And it's become, this year, it's my biggest client.
Yeah, mine too.
Up until then, it's my second biggest. But, I mean, and I love it. It's like family, you know, when you go on these things. It's like going, being familiar, and that's part of what we do. Being familiar with the people you're working with and trusting them is so huge when you're going out on the road, because the only uncomfortable part of going out on the road for me is when I'm going to somebody or someplace I've never met, never talked to. I don't necessarily know well enough to trust them. That's when I get butterflies. When I go on these things, it's just like, oh, this is cool. Going to Jasper, Texas, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this. The only thing that could happen is bad weather or I fall out of a boat or something like that. So
right. Yeah, it's
been a great deal, and I love the people that we work with.
I do as well. I and it sounds cliche, or maybe, I mean, this is really genuine. I feel incredibly fortunate to be where I'm at in my career, and I feel that way. I mean, a big part of why I feel that is the family that we have there at MLF, and as our, you know, both of us have said, I mean, it's our biggest client, and to have as our biggest client to be surrounded by people that first and foremost you've worked with a lot, but you also, and it no joke, there's not anybody that I don't want to hang out with that Major League. I mean, I don't think there is in our group, in our crew. I really feel like their family. I love those guys. I love you. I'm not just like a love fest here, but it's legitimate, like real caring for you guys. And and you know, I feel super fortunate to have a job where, you know, I'm on the water, which is there's no place I'd rather be than to be on the water. And then when I get off the water, I'm around people that I just genuinely respect. I value as friends, and of all different political persuasions, by the way, which I think is important to say nowadays. Yeah. And it's just it really is legitimately a family that we have.
I agree, and one of the things that I think about a lot is the fact that you and I enjoy fishing, enjoy bass fishing, enjoy being out on the water. I sometimes think, I wonder if I had 14, ping pong tournaments to cover. I don't think I'd be as excited. You know? And even though we hassle with the weather, I don't think I'd be like, this is cool. I get to see another ping pong tournament for 6 days.
And I probably went off on a different tangent, and I was going to say that. I feel like the advantage I have in doing this is that I love fishing. So some of the camera guys don't fish, and of course they still bring back amazing footage, and I'm blown away by it. But I'm like I kind of blown away that they can do what they do, because I feel like I have this great advantage in that I just love to fish. Watching Bob Cobb, and all those Bassmasters, I mean, I get a charge out of it. It's my sport. So that I just feel like that's a distinct advantage. So, it's just a great team. It's great to see how it's evolving. I was thinking the other day, like Major League Fishing, it's kind of it's a great name in that it's kind of general, in that walleye fishing can be under that umbrella eventually. Yeah, and true. So I see that. I see it come into the walleye world up here. So I know. I mean, there might be more shoots coming, Dave, I guess is what the balance, like you were saying, there's really an important balance you have to make. If you have family, your wife, that's kind of where we don't have any children, my wife and I, but we have like a zoo ear in the house.
That's a big responsibility. Yeah.
You kind of touched upon it a little earlier, but it is having that balance when you're gone, and then when you come home and making all that work. That's another kind of talent that it takes to do this job.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I know that you also do editing, which I do. So part of the balance that I struggle with or have to try to keep up with is I do almost as much editing as I do on the road stuff. So even this morning I was finishing up. I had that great feeling of just finishing in a big project of editing for MLF, ironically. And then, immediately 15 minutes later, I go, yeah, well, I got to do this other thing now. I got to start on this. So I even take it on the road sometimes and try to make myself edit for an hour a night. But when my favorite time of year is when all the editing's done in like October for a while, and the fishing slowed down a little bit. And then you just get to breathe for a minute, spend time with the family, and just relax. But usually, as you know, you look ahead on your calendar and think, oh God, November, I'm in bad shape. I gotta drum up some stuff, and it just kind of slowly fills up as you get to it.
Right.
Next thing you know, your big November that you were looking forward to is like filled up, except for that week of vacation you plan out. So we find ourselves, thankfully, being busy. And weirdly enough, this COVID year was, except for May when they canceled some events, was one of the busiest years I've had in a long time.
Same here.
I understand that there's a lot of new fishermen in the sport, so hopefully that'll play out for the next several years. But as far as MLF goes, who knows how big it can get. We got one of the things we have is some really smart business people in charge of that. With Duckett and a lot of the fishermen who are all really good business people, just by being there, they have to be good business people. I feel pretty confident. And you look at the website and all the banners that are on there now, all the different circuits and trails, it's just amazing.
It is amazing.
You and I went to the Big Five. You were at the Big Five last week, right?
Yeah.
Just seeing the amount of pure commerce that goes on. I mean, have you noticed how many young people are skittering around with cameras now, following fishermen like all day, every day?
Oh, really? Like on the water?
Yeah. Remember Polinick had a camera guy, and now Skeet's got a camera guy, and of course we know Wheeler's got a camera guy. Well, you see more and more of those.
Yeah.
If not, immediately in the morning, everybody's doing their Facebook stuff and their on-camera stuff. Everybody's running around with a DSLR and drones and GoPros. It's just exploded. So to me, that's I think we're kind of almost reaching the golden age of what's possible. You're part of it. What you're doing on your YouTube channel and your website and everything else is, I am not a big fan of social media, but the internet to me is this is what it's about. We can expand the sport, and people can watch regular folks like you fishing and learn some things, and yet you can still do this MLF thing and watch that, go to the next level, and now all these anglers have their own guys, so you can detail anybody you want on the water. Well, when we first started this, all you could do was turn on TNN on Saturday morning and hope that Roland was doing something you would enjoy.
That's
so
right.
To me, it's we're kind of in the golden age of technology and availability of what you can see in fishing, and I think that MLF has been a part of that.
No doubt. And I did want to ask you about what you thought were trends, in video production, but this kind of dovetails really nicely into that. What I think I think what is happening is you kind of have this nexus that's occurring where there's this democratization of content, of video content, of just people being able to create their own media, their own content, and have an audience where they can have just a huge audience, an incredibly big audience. So you're, for the first time in history, in television history and video production history, people are able to bypass the gatekeepers, where we come from the school of, okay, well, I have this television concept, I have this idea I want to make into a TV show, I've got to write a pitch for it, I have to have a treatment, whatever. You have to take all these materials and then go to a network and try to sell the idea. I mean, that's a very simplistic way of putting it. But you had to pitch your idea to an executive or whoever, of someone you had to get through before you could have something on air. Now, it's how good are you as a content creator and a marketer online to get that message out and grow your own audience. Like, I see a lot of these, like the Guggen Squad, these guys that started on YouTube very, very early in YouTube's history. They were like the early adopters of YouTube. They were on there with their GoPro chesties about the same time GoPros came online. It's like they were out there with the GoPros, the chesties, like in 2010, even earlier than that, infancy of YouTube. They're out there putting videos up, Those guys are now like millionaires. I mean, they were kids. And so you have that going on. And then you also have this incredible, and just in the fishing world in general, but particularly in bass fishing, you have this incredible attention to detail in lures. Like, lures are cool. The hooks are super sharp. Fishing became cool. Like, and I've always thought it was cool, but trust me, in high school in the early 90s, it wasn't very cool to be talking, be saying you're a fisherman, especially living in California. But now, I don't know what came first. Was it social media help make fishing cool, or did fishing just become cool on its own, or or all of that combined? It's made this perfect storm of like, where I just think fishing in the media world now, where Jacob Wheeler can have this huge audience and he's talking to his audience. He doesn't even, some of these guys, I mean, goodness gracious, they're maybe more concerned about getting content for their YouTube channel than for the broadcast on TV.
Oh, I agree. I think we saw that at the last, what was it, the Red Crest?
Was it Red Crest?
We hear on headphones all the time, and one of the anglers was literally talking to his GoPro as much as he was our camera. Yeah. And saying, hey, hang on a minute, I got to hit the record. I'm sorry I missed that last fish, to his audience on social media. And I was talking to Rob Newell about it. He said, oh, trust me, these guys are as concerned about their social media as they are about the television show, because that's their literal audience, that they're talking to at that moment. Doesn't mean they don't respect the show we're doing and glad to have it. It just reflects on the importance you were talking about, how important is social media. Talking to Mark Danis Jr. a couple weeks ago, he said, sponsors, it's all about social media now. I mean, yes, they want you on the shows, and yes, they want you to have, win tournaments. But he said, one of the first things they ask is how many followers you got, what kind of content can you give us? Doesn't mean they're going to give them any more money. They just want more content. So they got to know what they're doing. They got to have those camera guys. And MLF has understood that early on, too, is that if you look at some of the stuff they do on social, immediately after each event, it's pretty amazing what they turn around compared to what it used to take to do a fishing show. I mean, they're putting out content, hours after the thing airs. It's really well done, too. Right. And they continue to give content about all the angles. If you get on their website, it's pretty amazing what's possible. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the trend, is there seems to be kind of a ecosystem. I know that word's used too much, but if you have a television show, you better have a very, very strong social media presence too, or neither one's going to be successful. So MLF's embraced that pretty well, and a lot of the good shows have too. If you, kind of going back to what you originally asked was, what are the trends? I think the trends are that those guys like the Guggen Squad guys and the Dude Perfect guys that and a lot of the others that have nothing to do with fishing and hunting realize that the production value is important, but making it cool and having personality and making it fun was more important. And I think they've kind of helped make fishing cool in that way, in that what we used to do was pretty serious. Rarely was there much joking going on. They were having fun, but you'd have you know, it was one camera in the spirit of two cameras. And if you were really good, you'd have an underwater camera that was pretty primitive. But now it's like all these different forms of media and drone and everything else. And the ability of these young guys, and I say young guys because I'm 58 now, so I get to say this, but watching these young guys run around and having all these skills that with that little DSLR camera and the drones and the GoPros, that they just is second nature to them.
Yeah.
To me, I'm still learning that stuff. I'm still used to the big camera and proud of what I can do with it. But the abilities that they have right out of the box and what they watch kind of carries over into what we do. And I think it's been a big help. It's inspired me. I love watching these guys. To me, it's like, man, I couldn't believe I could run around with that. I have an A7S behind me now and an FS7 too, but it's what I can get with that just floors me compared to what I could get 20 years ago with the $50,000 camera. And I think, to me, it's inspiring to watch that stuff. And like I said before, I think it's kind of helping us reach kind of a golden age.
I agree.
And I'm excited about the future of it.
I am too. You had mentioned Dude Perfect. And correct me if I'm wrong. So if people are listening to the podcast or watching the video podcast don't know who Dude Perfect are, if you're on YouTube, most likely if you follow content on YouTube, you know who they are. But they have a huge social media following, huge YouTube following, and you've actually worked with them, right, Dave?
Yeah, through Bass Pro Shops, they had a kind of a partnership. They're actually hunters and fishermen too. They enjoy it and are pretty darn good at it. But we went on an elk hunt. That was kind of, had nothing to do with the fact of their success. They were just on an elk hunt and they were going to put it on their channel. And really nice guys, by the way, really, really easy to get along with, hard work. And, it doesn't look like hard work, but as you know, just to put a good YouTube piece on takes a lot of time. So anyway, I think last time I looked at some of their views, the stuff they do, they're getting, 60 million views.
Oh, that's astounding. That is such a crazy, that amount of, it's stunning to think like the amount of, money that that's generating off of it's pretty,
my kids are right at that generation. They're 21, 22 now. I remember the first, I said, I'm going to work with somebody named Dude Perfect. That was like the first ones they'd ever heard of that I went to work with. All the fishermen, and they know Kevin because I've worked with him for a long time, as you have, so they know that name. But as far as hearing about fishermen, they didn't know. But since I said, I think, Dude Perfect, that was cool to them. And that's all they watch. You never see them like flipping through cable channels.
Interesting.
You go downstairs and they're watching, well, I will say my one kid, he likes The Office a lot, so he'll watch that.
Sure.
But it's on Netflix. But they'll watch these videos that are a chess game because they're interested in chess, or people playing video games because they're trying to learn that video game. Well, that's a little bit of what we do, right?
Yeah.
People watch bass fishing partly because they want to learn about it.
Sure.
And that's what's different about bass fishing and hunting, and golf, maybe another example. People don't watch basketball because they want to learn how to do a layup better.
Right.
But people watch bass fishing partly for the entertainment and partly because they want to learn about it. So I don't know where I'm going on this, but my point was that the kids seem to be watching kind of to learn as much as to be entertained.
Yeah.
And when you watch what they're consuming, it's kind of both.
Right.
It's like the people have personality. They're playing these games. They're very funny, but they're also learning these video games, and that's a little bit of what we're doing. So I try to learn from that stuff. Okay, what makes this attractive to them?
Yeah.
Part of it is the fast pace. Some of them, have you even noticed that some of them are like played at 1.5 speed?
I have.
Like the kids can absorb it so fast.
That is unreal. That is unreal. You're saying that you're saying that the video, the actual produced video, is actually faster. They've just in the final video is actually sped up for quicker consumption.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like eating faster or something.
Does that bode well for humanity? In the long run?
No, I don't think so. I think we're kind of doomed. I think we've invented a doomsday machine, frankly. But
they warned about it in the 50s, Dave. They said this rock and roll is devil's music. It's going to be the end of society. I think maybe we're just here right now. Maybe this is it.
So. I think we are. I think you look at some of the trends, it's kind of scary, but that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you're in the deep end of this thing. What do you think are the trends coming? I mean, it's both.
It's funny this new century. I mean, when I saw it, I remember vividly. You know, we actually went freelance around the same time. 2009, fall of 2009 is when I jumped.
Right.
And I remember the first thing thinking when the first GoPros came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this is amazing! It's an HD camera, and it's like the size of a credit card. This is incredible, you know.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And then it was I can't remember if it was then DSLRs or DSLRs came first. So then it was this DSLR thing, you know, where you could get this amazing shallow depth of field with a consumer camera where it was able to produce these images. I mean, heck, I'm using a camera right now with a lens that is, I mean, astounding. Like, there was a time where you had to get this kind of image, you had to spend a lot of money, you know, and lenses and everything else, and just the camera body itself. And now, so the DSLRs, and I guess it was Canon, I don't know what it was, the 5D was really what really sent. And so now everybody has the ability to look like, especially in the right hands, a cinematographer, you know,
exactly.
and to just do this amazing videography. So I saw those trends being a big thing. And then YouTube, it was just kind of like then YouTube, they all kind of came together at the same time, you know? Mm-hmm. And so right now, I mean, in video production, it's just like, we kind of were geniuses because we picked a really good field to be in, because when we got into it, video production was primarily for putting on television. Now it's for putting on television and putting on social media, the internet, all over the internet. And so it's, you know, I just see there's just video content is more and more important, more and more people want it. And I guess being on the boat, just seeing, I mean, it's I guess for me, it's YouTube right now. It's the YouTube, it's podcasting, it's this new media. And for me, I if I would have had my act together, I would have got into it earlier. But of course, I'm actually working and actually having to make a living. So it's hard it's hard to see those trends really develop. But you know, for me, it's just like, I just want to throw my hat, you know, I just want to get into the ring, whether I get my ass handed to me or not. I just want to get in there and experience it and try my hand at it, because I think it's so interesting what's happening right now. You know, it's just the ability to, I mean, you can, you know, it's democratized content creation.
Definitely. I think what's odd to me, and I guess nobody knows how to crack the code on it, but I remember early on, I said, hey, Greg, you know, you're really into this stuff. You have good knowledge of what's the important fishing videos to be watching on YouTube. And you sent me like, I don't know, 10 of them. And I remember looking at them and going, I don't see why one has 60,000 followers and one has 500 followers. I don't get it. I mean, I kind of do. You know, you build it and you work on it and you massage it and you buy things. But I still don't. I haven't cracked the code in my mind as why. And I'm not going to name names because that might be insulting. One guy gets all these views and is really no better than the guy that struggles to get any views. So I don't know what the code is on that. And sometimes I wonder if it's the clickbait, you know, if it's the titles or whatever. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Pete and I, my partner in crime for the Another Fishing Show venture, and also he's on this as well on the podcast. We started filming in 2011. I knew the internet was out there, and I knew it was possible to put a TV or put content out on the internet, but I didn't really know how. But I knew I was just like, let's do our own thing. Let's do a show. Let's just make it silly and just our own nonsense.
Yeah.
And so that was in 2011. I mean, I still have footage that I haven't even edited yet, that I still eventually like a Throwback Thursday put it up there or something,
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 2015 that we actually put something up, and it was on Vimeo. We had no one's on Vimeo, and yet we thought Vimeo was it, Well, meanwhile, then I started hearing Dave Lefebvre actually tournament fisher with Major League Fishing. He told me about what was happening on YouTube, and so I was like, okay, then we got to. YouTube is obviously where it's at. Crazy people are getting crazy views. They're making money off their YouTube channel, which blew my mind. And so I was like, okay, we need to focus on this. So I've really kind of drilled down and tried to figure out what the hell is going on with YouTube for many years, and it's been a very, very frustrating endeavor. But I think so. The people that were the early adopters of YouTube are megastars now, and I hate using that term. It's ridiculous, megastars.
Influencers.
Or
beyond that.
You and I feel the same way about fame, I'm sure. It's just nonsense and celebrity and it's whatever. But but those people that started on the platform, for whatever reason, that algorithm, them being on the platform in its early days and having all that content up there, really, I've heard stories about these guys that said the algorithm, for whatever reason, it was 2011, 2012. Actually, I think it was, they really, it sounds like those guys really started uploading a lot in like 2011. A little bit later after that, there was just they talk about a year where it was just boom, their channels just went boom, like from 2,000 subscribers, and then just exploded from there. So something happened algorithmically to those early adopters. Now, if you're like myself and you're trying to get a foothold on YouTube, I think one of the most important things you can do is consistency. Like you have to have a video up every week. 2 videos is great. 3 videos is really good. And then your thumbnail needs to be clickbaity. Needs to be pretty clickbaity. I mean, you need to. I look at it like this way. It needs to be. It's a billboard, and you got to draw people in. It's the same thing as a billboard. True. That thumbnail. Right. And its title. Like description's not all that important, so it's the thumbnail and the title. And then consistency. And so those are the keys from what I've been able to determine of YouTube. Okay. And then also there's, YouTube's an alternative. And so I think, especially with these younger viewers, I think they don't want flashiness. They don't want polished content. I heard a story about one of the Guggen Squad guys saying that not to have him on a wireless mic. He said, no, my audience will not be okay with me using a wireless mic. Just use the stick mic, to interview me. So,
it's like Bob Dylan when he went electric, everybody was against it.
Yeah. So
you ever hear that story? Maybe it's like that. They want more raw, personal feeling.
And I'm wondering if this millennial generation, this is a generation of 9/11 and all of these things that happened. I wonder if they're just calling bullshit. I'm wondering. I mean, seriously, I wonder if they're just like the mainstream. They've just they're done with the BS, and so they want that more raw, genuine, real reality show. That feel like they're not being hoodwinked. I'm wondering if that's an aspect to it. That kind
of makes sense, and I think when it's one person, also that makes it feel more personable. Like they're talking to you. I don't know. So there's something about the privacy of. I know it sounds weird, not privacy, but like the intimacy of watching a YouTube video feels like I'm the only one who may be watching this right now, even though there may be 50 million. Instead of watching in front of a TV, where even our show, you're thinking, hopefully it's got a big audience because we want to keep working. But it feels like even when I'm fixing things, the first thing I do is look for a YouTube video on it. It's made me able to fix stuff that I never could have fixed before. So that's the plus of it. And you see all kinds of production value on that, where some guy's trying to stick his iPhone down a carburetor.
Yeah.
And then the next one's really well done. So it's kind of important in that respect. But watching my kids and what they consume, I'd have to say you're right as far as that portion of it, but they still seem to like a good movie.
Yeah, that's good.
And a funny show.
Sure.
But as far as it's all about the pace of video gaming, for lack of a better word, because that Gen Z, which it is now mostly, they would be Gen Z. Millennials are like in their 30s now. But even that, I think you and I, especially me, there was a cutoff from I have zero interest in video games. And it's not because I don't admire them and what they're, I mean, if I would have had one of those when I was 13, I would have like, what the heck is this? But I really feel like that part and the iPhone and everything else, because they were born with that in their hands, makes them see the world differently and see content so differently that it's hard for us to even comprehend what they enjoy. I just can't get my head around it.
Yeah.
Probably compared to what our dads and moms were like in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. It's like they were watching these black and white TVs, whereas they probably thought color TV, was a big deal. Well, now we're watching these kids who might consume 100 videos a day and still go to school. They've got so much going on that you better get their attention immediately. And I guess that's what the successful YouTube videos are doing. And I guess subscribing obviously helps. And
right.
I can't get my head around it a lot of times.
It's in many respects, I feel like, it's a better, so you're think about the iPhone. iPhone came on the scene in 2007. Well, the iPhone, I mean, what are you going to watch, a YouTube video on a BlackBerry? Like, the iPhone was laid the foundation for the success of YouTube. To be able to watch in your anything in the palm of your hand, and like you were saying earlier, the intimacy of it, it's just like, it's so easy. You can watch it anywhere. Whereas a television, you're kind of like, oh, I got to be in that room, or I got to be over there.
That's true.
It's the portability of it, just the ease of it. I really watch a ton of stuff now on YouTube, and it's well-produced stuff, PBS specials. But you can also watch a guy that has great content that's making it, in his basement or something. And so that's really fascinating, like the landscape now, of that.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, so I know I appreciate your time very much, and I didn't want to take up more than an hour of your time, Dave.
It went fast. You said it would go fast. It did. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, so I've really thank you very much for doing this, because I know you're in the midst of an editing storm, and those are always fun. I speak from experience there.
Yes,
but before we go, just tell people like your MLF duties and who you work with a lot, because he's quite a character, and I'm curious how if you have any stories of working with Rob Newell or just in general, any talent in your career or funny stories that you could think of that people you think would enjoy.
I think Rob is obviously the freshest in my mind. And I've worked with him since the BP2, what is that? This is our third year in the BPT. He and I got along great right from the start. The thing about Rob is he is extremely concerned about getting good content and saying something that helps, instead of just, I'm going to fill the air with this because I don't care what's going on besides what I want to talk about. So he very carefully listens to what's going on, what Marty and everybody's saying. He very carefully listens to the show because he wants to know what's already been said and what's going on that he can't see. I spent, me and Rob, if you want to make Rob mad, just ask him to do something when he's not ready. Like I can remember the only time that I think he has actually been short with me. He's a very, very good guy, very easy to get along with. But one time he was sitting there, he had like his earbuds in, he's got his iPad in, he's got another iPad where he's looking at what the Anglers is, and he's just sitting there concentrating, sitting in the rain, by the way. I think it was Eufaula. And he's sitting there. And I was getting real antsy because you know how I am. I don't like sitting on my butt. So I wanted to go do something. I wanted to go shoot out a boat or something like that. And I was like, hey, can you find somebody to go shoot out a boat? And he looked at me like, I'm trying to figure that out. Okay. That's the only time he ever got mad at me. And I realized right then, don't rush him. He is working his butt off to find a good thing to do rather than just willy-nilly run all over the lake.
That's great.
And being a guy that always wants to be constantly doing something, it's sometimes hard on me but then I've just come to realize just let him do his job. What you get will be way more valuable than just go shooting some guy that's in 30th place over here just because you feel like you need to be. They're never going to take the camera anyway. But Rob is one of my favorite people of all time just because he cares so much about what he's doing. He's got a great sense of humor about it. People love him. Every angler you roll up on, they'll go, oh, now stop catching fish. And he's just, every one of those guys has got a personal relationship with them, so he's very comfortable getting close to their boats and things like that. So I like all the guys on that staff. I've worked with Marty and everybody else, but Rob and I have worked, a couple hundred hours now on the water every year, and it's just really easy to be around. Another guy that's probably, as you know, one of our favorites of all time in a lot of ways, and this is the last story I'll tell, is Johnny Morris. I mean, you and I have spent a lot of time with him back when we were kind of his home video guys, and he is everything that is advertised and more. I mean, the stuff that he's done for the business and for people just in general has been pretty amazing, and he's just fun to be around too. That guy has more energy in his little finger than most people have in their whole life. I've never seen anything like it.
It's incredible.
I remember the last thing you asked for a story. We showed up at Nunavut, which used to be Northwest Territories, at Plummer's Lodge to fish for Arctic char. And it was 10 o'clock at night. It was still daylight because it was September. And the guys were like, welcome, Mr. Morris. We've got your cabin ready. We've got a nice dinner planned for you. And he looked around and he said, I'm kind of hoping we go fishing. And this is at 10 o'clock at night. So we fished till 3 o'clock in the morning when it finally started getting dark, and then went to bed. But that's, just a couple of quick stories.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
anyway.
Like, I really appreciate it, Dave. I mean, like we were saying, those stories, and I have moments where I'm kind of like, just pinch me. To think that we've had that lifestyle, we've been to those places, we've had those experiences with people like Johnny Morris. It's really I guess it happens when you get older. I don't know. I don't take any day for granted anymore.
Right.
And those are experiences that really put the icing on the cake of this career that we've made for ourselves.
Next time we'll talk about you and the Amazon.
Oh, yeah. Let's leave that for part 2 then.
I really appreciate being on here. I enjoyed it, Greg. I always enjoy talking to you, and thanks for listening to me babble. And anybody else that's listening, I appreciate it.
There he is, Dave Appleton, Upriver Productions. Love you, Dave. And yeah, you're welcome to come back anytime. Really enjoyed it.
All right, buddy. See you in a couple days.
All right. Sounds good, Dave.